It is Neil Atkinson and John Gibbons. It is Talking Reds. It is Wednesday, and there is so much news. There's an overwhelming quantity of news.
It's still breaking.
I'd also point out, John, it's the first day of the second test against India at Edgbaston. Neither me nor you were there, which feels like a real oversight, frankly.
I know, we
but
could have gone.
It's probably good though because there's so much news.
Yeah, it's breaking around us as you speak. There's probably more news as we're going along. There'll be news coming out of our ears, but. Yeah, I feel like news reporters here now.
Should we do it? Which story do you want to? Yeah, which story do you want to do?
Oh, I'll lead on Jarell Quansah.
Go on.
Jarell Quansah has announced he is going to Bayer Leverkusen, so they're delighted to get him. He's done a really nice Instagram post where he's thanked everyone, but he's also basically said ta-ra for now. He's opened it up, like a Netflix series. He's opened it up for series 2, which I liked as well. He's left the door a little bit open for the renewal for to come back in a few years. It says once a Red, always a Red, and he's playing in Red now, so he's not lying. Bayer Leverkusen, but they're really, really pleased to get him, which pleased me as well. They were like, we've got a brilliant young centre half, and they have.
They have. I like the idea that with Quansah, he gets to now be a big signing. If you know what I mean, I think that's such an important thing for a young player. As soon as someone's put money on you, they've got to pick you. Frankly,
I remember it's something that me and you've talked about a couple of times, but not necessarily on shows. But Didi Hamann, when he left Bayern Munich to come to Newcastle, and a few people said like, "Why are you doing that?" And he was like, "Well, at Bayern Munich, I'll always just be the young lad, and that's how you're treated." And almost like how you feel as well. Like I'm the academy boy, who everyone just thinks should be happy to be here, and it's the easiest one to drop or sort of take off and things like that. Whereas I'm going to Newcastle, I think at the time he was one of their biggest signings in terms of fee, but also in profile. It was a big deal for them to get him, and then you just view differently, even though you're the same player. For him, he's coming in to a great club, a club who've recently been champions, of course. So there'll be expectation on him to do well, but I think he'll enjoy that. I've interviewed Jarell Quansah. I did him last summer and liked him a lot. But he's a big guy. He's literally got broad shoulders, and I think he's quite happy to have a bit of pressure on them. Excellent
stuff. Okay, so that's your first bit of news. Next bit of news is there is more and more happening to link Luiz Diaz away from Liverpool. So Diaz finds himself in a situation where there is talk of a big money move from Bayern Munich, and there's talk of a big money move to one of the 4 PIF-run clubs within Saudi Arabia. But simultaneously, that has been slapped down by people who cover Liverpool, saying Liverpool are not interested in Luiz Diaz going away this summer. He's got a big sporting role to play for the next season or seasons from there. The key question, John, outside of the cliche of every player has their price, because they do, is this some haggling from Liverpool, or do you think this is one of those ones where Liverpool actually would just really like to have Luiz Diaz on the books going into next season?
Yeah, it's the latter for me. Just based on this, it's been sort of slapped down a little bit firmer than what I would expect. It doesn't feel like this is the start of a negotiation. In fact, if anything, it feels like they're trying to end it, and they're trying to say no, we want him coming. And like you say, Neil, if a crazy offer comes in, then they'd obviously have to look at it because of his age and his contract situation, although they seem quite relaxed about that, really. But most players have their price, don't they? And most players, not just at Liverpool, but in the world, would have a fee where you'd have to go, well, hang on, we didn't want to sell him, but look at this. Away from that, it looks to me that they're very clear. And like I said, it's been firmer than I was expecting, in terms of the rebuttal on that. He seems quite relaxed about it as well, so I don't think he's forcing anything. So if he's quite happy to stay and Liverpool are quite happy to keep him, I think the likelihood is he does end up playing for Liverpool next year.
I'm going on a bit of a journey here, but stay with me.
Okay.
So I have a thing, if you remember Jose Mourinho, it came out sort of midway through his prominent career that what he would do would be, he first get into a club and there'd be a lad and he'd make a bit of a show of a lad. And with that lad, it would almost be a bit like he turned him into a little bit of a scapegoat internally, and it wasn't very nice. At Chelsea, it was Joe Cole, for instance, and all that stuff would come out, and it would be to make certain points all the way through. And sometimes Mourinho would justify it afterwards by saying, well, it's because I thought he was strong enough and I wanted to do this or that. I'm not quite sure about that. I think Liverpool have a little bit of a thing every now and again where with a player, I think Liverpool are prepared to compromise from time to time. I think they will have to compromise on a couple this summer who you think they want to get out the door. Nunez and Shimikas are the obvious ones. But I think every now and again Liverpool quite like having a player where they get to go, nope, our terms, because I think it's important for Liverpool to put that out into the market. And I sort of feel a bit like this is Diaz. This is one of the things Diaz has become.
Yeah, quite possibly, and I think Liverpool have a reputation for being good sellers, and by good sellers I mean they get good money for what they're selling, and I think they probably like that reputation. You'd rather that than the opposite, when they just give players away, and sometimes you sort of have to. I think with Núñez they might have, the example you used, they might have a decision to make at some point where they just go, well listen, this is the best offer we're going to get this summer, and we want him to go this summer, so it has to be that. But with others, I think they are quite happy to say, no, this is the price, and if no one's paying it, then he's staying. They've shown that they're relaxed about people going deep into the contract, so you're almost removing that from another club. You're removing that from another club's bargaining tool. You're taking that card out their hand. You're like, so the club who's Barcelona or whoever wants to get him on a cheap now sort of Bayern Munich aren't able to go, oh, well, we've 2 years left on his contract. They're like, we'll sign people with 2 weeks left on the contract. Have you seen what we've done there? Or we'll just sort of let you go. And, in Trent's case, they managed to get, what was it, close to £10 million for a player who couldn't even play for us anymore. And so I think for Liverpool, they see a long game in all of these. It's not just about this deal and this player. It's how you want to be sort of perceived in the market. And listen, they want to have good relationships with other clubs, and they talk about that as well. So they want to be fair, but fair is consistent, and I think Liverpool want to be consistent on it.
100%. With Diaz, there's someone's put in the comments, there's a rumour that's going around that Liverpool have offered Núñez, Chiesa and some money for Osherman.
Can't see it.
I don't think that's just not how they operate either.
No.
But I can see Osherman ending up on Liverpool's radar. I'm not hugely sort of opposed to that. But with Diaz, I think the other thing is he just gives you so much leeway in terms of squad building, because you've seen, I think he can play all three positions across the front, and we do have a thing about who's going to cover for Salah. It's in what will be some big games, let's be clear, in December and January going into next season, and also just sort of support him through that period. We've seen last season him end up playing as the central forward, for want of a better way of framing it, and obviously he's got the really good almost job share thing going on with Gakpo off the left. But also what he does is he means that you can say, well, we quite like the look of him.
Yeah.
So we can buy him because he's come available, he's opportunistic, because we know what we can repurpose Diaz to do more of X, Y or Z, as I've just described it.
Yeah, with his versatility that you've just described, and with his output from last season, and with his quality and with his fight, you'd end up, I personally think, making the argument in total that he's our second most important forward after Mo Salah, of course, in terms of the ones that we've got and the ones who are currently at the club. And so, Gakpo maybe third, they're not looking to sell him, and then you've got 4, 5 and 6. It feels unlikely at this stage where 4, 5 and 6 will all go. I think at least one of them, maybe even two of them, will end up sort of still being at the club. And so I just can't imagine a scenario, if you look at it like that Liverpool sell their second most important forward and end up with the 4th and 5th still kicking about. That doesn't make any sense to me, and I think won't make any sense to them. And listen, you can talk about the summer before the summer. We do the transfer committee games. For those of you who don't subscribe, we all get together and we pretend we are the transfer committee. It's meant to be fun. It gets more complicated year on year, but it's you can play it then, and it's like playing fantasy football or Championship Manager. You move in and out. We sold Diaz, big offer come in, roll of a dice. We were like, fuck it, why not? But the realities of the situation now are different, and even for the people who don't play as pretend to play it right, might look at it in April and go, well, maybe if a big offer comes in. But right now, when no one's seemingly sniffing around Jota a little bit, or maybe Jota's just going, listen, I'm happy here at Liverpool, so you're fine. There's the Chiesa situation, every now and again he's sort of linked with Napoli, but it wouldn't surprise if he's still at the club. And then Núñez, someone needs to come in and put the money down. And so you're in the realities of a transfer window now, that you can't just say, sell him, move him out, get this money for him and then spend it. So I think the idea of Diaz being the one, I agree with where I think Liverpool have ended up, which is like it's taken a massive offer.
The one thing I think, in terms of what you just said there, I think if they buy someone who's clearly coming in to be a starting central forward, number 9 or however you want to describe it, I think Josh will want to go.
Yeah,
I think he'll go into, well, where's my game coming from in this? Because the manager hasn't shown any desire to use him left-hand side. So I think that Jota becomes, therefore, one who Liverpool may well be able to move on. But I think that until Liverpool have secured that player, I think Liverpool want to have that option within the squad, and they decided they're going to ride with Jota and not with Nunez going into next season for a variety of reasons, which is absolutely fine. But I think if they secure that, I think Jota will say that he wants to move on, and then it wouldn't surprise me if there's a bit of movement on both Jota and Nunez at that point. But then that's when that throw is open. So it'd be really useful to still have Diaz around. And then if you do go and get someone who might play off the left or might be a central player, whichever way it goes, well, you can then unlock the idea of, well, Diaz goes and does more of X or more of Y. And I just think that's why it makes that's the direction of travel. It'll make a ton of sense, and that's where we're going to end up. Next thing on it then is, do you want to do the next bit of news?
We've got some new coaches. Gianni van Bronckhorst has come in, so there was a little bit of talk about him, but it has now happened. Obviously, he's managed quite a few clubs and played at a really
won the league with Feyenoord.
Yeah, well, there you are. And so he's come in with a lot of experience, and so it feels like a decent one. And then an old friend, Xavi Valero, coming back, goalkeeper coaching. I think Heaton thinks he's good. I mean, from memory, I've not texted Andy since the news. It's literally breaking around us.
We haven't got the time.
But I think Heaton says he's good. So he was here. Apparently he's done 7 years at West Ham here. I did not know that. But, came in under Benitez and lots of Spanish coaches then. So he knows where everything is. Maybe his pastor works. He knows Carol and Caroline.
He knows that bit, but he might not know the accent.
Oh, that's true.
That's
he might go to the wrong place.
Oh God, that'd be embarrassing, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Be mortified.
Like when we had that meet with Sound City and I went to the wrong offices.
Absolutely. They moved. No one told you.
Yeah, which is fine. It wasn't top of the list. But yeah, so we need to be careful on that action point for someone from the club.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll be watching. Someone said they're going, yeah, absolutely. the lads have got that boxed off. Did Gio van Bronckhorst play for Everton?
Do you know what? It feels like he did. I was just made up. I got the text and I was like, have we got a blue here? It feels like he did 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't quite work out, but everyone liked him.
Yeah.
Are you going to tell me he didn't?
Didn't, unfortunately.
It feels like he did.
I know. Do you know why? He had a run at Rangers in a key era where there was a lot of Everton Rangers crossover. And then he ended up in the Premier League, so somewhere in the back of your mind you're thinking he must have done 6 months with the Blues. Come on.
Did he come with Richard Goff?
Yeah, that sort of it's that sort of little move there. Walter Smith's worked with him, surely to God.
I did have a big think about whether he played for Everton. I hoped we got a blue, because obviously we're one down now.
Yeah, we need to get one in.
Down, so we need to get one in.
Yeah, no, I'm with it 100%, but I'm glad you thought exactly the same thing as me.
Honestly,
I could picture him in the kit. But unfortunately, no. Gio van Bronckhorst did not play for the Blues. He did play for Arsenal for a period of time, which feels as though it's got some sort of useful connotation somewhere. Can be used for some degree of wind-up merchantry.
Would he have played with Arteta, or is he?
I think he's just a little early. I think he's a little early for Arteta. He was a little early for Arteta, and he goes from Arsenal to Barcelona. What I think is really interesting as a player, and how this sort of knocks onto coaching stuff, because it was interesting yesterday, from nowhere, Sean Rodgers just sort of reminded me, we were doing a gutter show, and Sean Rodgers reminded me that Slot was a 10. And I'd sort of forgotten that Slot was a 10, in the conversation around Florian Wirtz and the idea that Slot can go...
I didn't even know he was a 10.
Yeah, he played attacking midfield. And the idea that he can go to Florian Wirtz and put a little bit of a presentation together. But a part of it is able to say, listen, I know number 10s, lads. I've been a number 10. What I think is interesting about Van Bronckhorst was he's one of the most successful movers of position in the modern era. He went from being a midfielder to a left-back and won the European Cup with Barcelona, went there for Rijkaard and ends up winning the European Cup in 2006. And he was great in that team, and it was such a good footballing team, and it was part of that era of saying, why don't we just have footballers everywhere? Wouldn't that be better? I think that there might be a Liverpool either both in the market or with the existing squad. For instance, I think Szoboszlai is going to get some games in a slightly different position over the course of the season. Jones, it wouldn't surprise me, moves a little bit again, has to show a bit more versatility in there. It might be that something happens with Gomez needing to cover a certain area or something like that. And we've talked about Diaz. I think the idea of if Van Bronckhorst is able to say, lads, I had to do this.
Yeah.
I think it's no bad thing. I think it's no bad thing to have coaches who've got that sort of experience at any level. But if you're Van Bronckhorst, you're able to say, and I won the European Cup.
Yeah, it's a fair point, and listen, his whole record, is quite something. He's managed, he's coached, obviously played at the highest level, but like you say, in those different positions and the versatility that we're going to show, it's not unfeasible to think that the next season we kick off some games with 2 defenders and 8 midfielders, basically, and that's how it sort of looks a little bit. Oh, sorry, 7 and Mo Salah, although he thinks he's a winger, the mad bastard.
Yeah, he's obsessed with it.
He thinks he's Steve Highway.
Yeah.
I just run up and down and put crosses in, support the fullback. And and somehow end up with 40 goals.
Yeah. Stanley Matthews.
Oh, it is.
Didn't score 40 goals in his career, the fucking fraud. Anyway, go on.
The Matthews final, some other poor coach scored a hat-trick.
Scored a hat-trick? Stan Mortensen scores a hat-trick and he gets called the Matthews final. Do you know his joke on that?
No.
When I died, I'll call it the Matthews funeral.
That's a good joke.
It's a great joke.
Yeah, you should tell that more. That is a good joke. So that's Froby's excellent. 10 on, no notes. And so... Yeah, so you can envision the situation where that happens. So I think with someone like him, but yeah, it looks a good one. But we say 2 out of Tafarel, and which just feels sad.
It does feel sad.
I never met him, but I just like the fact that he was knocking about. Sometimes people see him in town.
Yeah,
in Lunya. Of course he was.
Of course he would be. Lunya makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
But I was about to say, where do you think he lived?
Yeah,
I reckon he was your end for certain.
Walton way. Yeah, Walton's gone out of fashion a bit with the footballers, but I think for some of the coaches and stuff like
be
that,
perfect.
It's still a thing. Yeah,
quick in and out of town, good buses.
Yeah,
all that sort of stuff. Can have a pint. Get home handy.
Yeah, sees Aldo.
That's what Tafarel's up to, all that sort of stuff. He will be much missed, obviously, and also in the hallowed halls of Lunya is where they're going to miss him especially. But I reckon Alisson will miss him as well. It must be nice to have a mate from home around.
Yeah.
He does the same job.
Yeah, so we're an Evertonian down and a Brazilian down.
I think a Brazilian goalkeeper, which are very specific niche. Like, are we going to start ringing round to Dida and saying, lad, we know you could only ever jump one way.
Yeah.
But
and he probably got stuff on, but we need him. And did he do 6 months at Everton?
Yeah,
if so.
Ticking a ton of boxes.
So name your price.
As far as we're concerned, just roll up and see where you end up. This is that I think all of this, I think it's been such an exciting summer. You and I actually haven't seen each other that much. Someone's pointed out I'm a bit sunburnt or look a bit sunburnt from Glastonbury. I don't without the big light on, I'll be honest with you. The big light it's a punishing light, the big light. The sooner we get my moody atmospheric lighting in here, the better, and we can all look really, really sultry and sumptuous rather than this current sort of big red blare that my face must look like. Redder than this is the way in which it is at the minute. But we haven't, the summer is shaping up really exciting, but it's also shaping up sort of so full of potential. I know you're going to go away on the tour and you're unbelievably excited about that. It feels like Preston's now in about, well, it is in now less than a fortnight away. That game against Preston where the champions are going to get back together. I'm just thrilled by it at the moment, and it feels as though nothing's finished. There's a lot of business outs, I think, first to be done, but also some ins as well. And when I wrote the blurb for this, I said we may well get on to talk about centre half replacements. You know, Gay looks like he's getting closer and closer to being a Liverpool player from the noises that are being made, at least if they can get the fee that they want out of Crystal Palace. Palace have got their own shit going on at the minute, which I think is adding complications. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I don't think football's straightforward, and if you're Palace at the minute, you're probably returning phone calls going, listen, we've got enough on, and putting the phone down. But it is an exciting moment and it's an exciting season to come.
It is, and Liverpool are in great nick, not just because of the work they've done, but also they're doing it from a position of strength. You know, we are champions. It is the summer of Liverpool. See, Celtic have nicked that. Some of the Celtic, honestly. Oh, those pricks. Just
I'm having made with everyone because I convinced myself and I was right with the summer of Atkinson. So Celtic can fuck off, Liverpool can fuck off, 66 can fuck off. So from the point at which we won that league title up until yesterday, it's been the summer of Atkinson and everyone else is a pretender.
Yeah, and some cunts in 30 years will be saying, we did that first, like, will you never walk alone? And we're going to have else. But anyway, it is the summer of Liverpool. We are champions. They've signed really well. And I always sort of, you know, in the summer I look at what Liverpool are doing and then I worry about the others, you know, first game of the season. But I did almost accidentally in a bit of a delve in terms of other stuff. Newcastle fans are fuming. They've done fuck all. They're not happy. They want everyone sacked.
Yeah. Well, they've had a couple sacked already, so you know they're getting somewhere.
So Newcastle fans, you know, you think about Newcastle, you know, they're going to build on next year. They've got the Champions League, you know, maybe title challengers. Who knows? They've done nothing, and the fans are getting sort of, you know, more and more wound up. City were looking all right until they very much didn't. Got knocked out and there still seems to be bags of space when you play against them. You know, you can't look too much into this tournament and things like that. I did love that Jurgen Klopp said, "Oh, it's a pain this," and Pep Guardiola went, "Yeah, I agree." And then he just went out.
Yeah,
I felt like Jurgen's still making things happen.
Yeah, so I just brought that about.
It was absolutely mad. And they went the only team who won all three in the groups, and then suddenly Jurgen says, "Joke this," and then they just go out.
I liked how Guardiola went about that as well, which was to basically say, you know, we're playing in this is the way in which it goes, but yes, we expect this to be. I think he might have used a word almost like disastrous for later in the season.
but the players were like, fuck that.
Yeah.
I don't want to shit January. It's hard enough. It's cold, dark.
Yeah.
I don't want to be knackered as well.
Somehow you're going away to Forest 3 times. No one's quite sure how it's happened.
I just probably went out the competition, but City look like they've obviously still got issues. Arsenal still haven't signed Zero Mendy, which is sort of quite funny. It feels like they've signed him 4 times.
I don't know what's going on. Some of them got Norgard before him.
I know. To be the backup to the fellow who they've sort of forgot to announce. And so, and obviously the ongoing number 9 weirdness. And so I do feel like Liverpool were ahead and have stayed ahead, which is great. So it gets me really excited for the season. There's going to be loads of new players to analyse. I'm going to try and get up to Preston if I can. If not, like you say, I've got the tour, which is brilliant. So yeah, it is dead exciting, and they're going to have loads of time with the new manager to gel together, to work together, and I think there's going to be a massive determination to make the most of these few years. I think it almost especially from the players who've been here a while, because they know it's hard to win back-to-back leagues, because you know there's other teams.
Have you heard Blundell's thing? Do you know Blundell's thing that he's been saying? I'm sure other people have said it, but Phil said it, and it's stuck in my head when Phil said it. We haven't retained a trophy since 1984.
Is that right?
Yeah. When you go through, we haven't retained a trophy since 1984.
Yeah. So I think they'll be looking at it and thinking like, look, we had 5 years of competing with a Man City team, which is one of the greatest teams ever seen in this country. Yeah, teams are going to be good next season, but they're not going to be that good. So let's massively make hay while the sun shines, and let's hoover up trophies while there's a little bit of a dip in what's going on elsewhere.
Okay, I want to talk about something else. Ashley T. Granderson though says no one cares about Glastonbury, lad. I only wish that was fucking true. I haven't come out and looked at me phone.
Parliament cares about Glastonbury.
It's honestly ridiculous. I would like less Glastonbury. As someone who really enjoys it, I want as little Glastonbury discourse afterwards as possible. I don't want other people to rate it and tell me whether or not I had a good time. I'll decide whether or not I had a good time. Thank you very much indeed, and we'll go from there. I want to do something more serious, John, because there is one aspect of the club at the minute which is hugely concerning, which is the women's team. We're in this moment where they haven't got a manager. Taylor Hinds, who wasn't club captain last season but was de facto club captain, has chosen to leave and not renew. There's rumours around Olivia Smith that may or may not be true, but they're not going anywhere, and she was electric last season, if we're honest about it. She was arguably one of the league's 3 or 4 most exciting attacking players. And then within there as well, Fuka Nagano, who may not actually be as neat a tactical fit now, but is obviously a really excellent footballer. There's rumours that she might not be re-signing. Some players have left as well, and there just doesn't look to be a whole world of progress going on. Could be wrong, but first and foremost, I'd like there to be a manager confirmed.
It's not just the manager, there's been a lot of changes. So the manager, obviously, people notice a lot more. But there was a guy called Russ Fraser who was effectively the Richard Hughes of the women's team, who left in March and you know, didn't get loads of sort of publicity at the time, but he was effectively running the women's team. He sort of, you know, moved away for whatever reason in March. Obviously, Matt Beard goes around the same time as well, and then, you know, is replaced by an interim manager who they seemingly haven't decided or not whether they're going to give the job to, but then there's no other names being sort of thrown in. Susan Black is another person who people might have seen as stepped away in the summer. She's been doing the role for a long time. She's got away, and she was in communications, but she was a big driving force around the women's team as well, around, you know, taking it more seriously, giving it direction, and so she's going to be a big blow. So there's 3 big figures there who were a big part in getting the women's team to where it was, and to that 4th place finish of the season before.
23-24, yeah.
23-24, who were a big part. You know, Susan Black in terms of giving it direction and momentum and focus within the football club. Russ is the Richard Hughes sporting director, and Matt Beard, and have all now gone. And for different reasons, and with Matt, that was a choice that the club made, obviously, but it just feels like, well, what has it been sort of replaced with? I think Russ has been replaced, but obviously Matt hasn't effectively, and Susan sort of stepping away is a real loss as well. I just think if we're not careful, that the women's team comes a bit directionless again, and I'd like to see a bit of a clearer idea of what the plan is, almost what the identity is of the team, really, because I think they've become a bit of a nothingness, really. I think Prenton Park worked well. They've moved to St Helens. I quite like St Helens in some ways. I take my kids. It's better for that. It's better facilities. It feels a little bit warmer in terms of sort of taking them, but it's still not ideal. It's still out there with St Helens. Everton are going to be playing at Goodison Park, which is obviously a huge thing for them, and so it's a bit out the way. But is there anything you can sort of do about that? The team is all right, but the quality of football on the mat wasn't always the best. That was maybe one of the reasons why they sort of wanted to change. But if you're not throwing money at it, you're sort of getting the tier of players below the very best ones who are going to go and play for sort of Arsenal or City. So you're competing for players sort of slightly below that, and then you get one in like Liv Smith, who you say is a real superstar, but then you either need to add to it or you're going to lose it. I don't think she will go this summer, but I don't think she'll sign another contract, because unless you get a few other players who are at a level, because she wants to play at the highest level, and that's been proved with Taylor Hinds, who was one of our best players sort of going on. And so, but
it's a really, the thing about that at the minute as well, that the number of unbelievable players Chelsea have got within the league, like it's an unbelievable number of players that Chelsea have got who are absolutely top notch. Hinds may not start regularly for Arsenal. She might not be a first choice starter, but she'll be involved. She'll be on and off the bench all the time, can play full back both sides. She'll have a role to play. I'm not talking as I'm when I say this. My point here is that if Liverpool aren't careful, the speed with which they become a club who are prey to the main four, and then possibly other sides in Europe as well, is I think that is probably the case now, but that can become so much the case so quickly, and then the way in which the direction of travel of the women's game as a whole.
Absolutely. And listen, it's difficult. It is hard when you sort of try to build. There's only so many European places, so it's hard for Liverpool to sort of break into that mould where you're able to say, well look, we've got European football. It's not like 4 clubs in the Champions League and then sort of Europa like the men's is. So you end up being a club where you're trying to reach, but the ones who are reaching are already there, and they're able to just sort of take your players. So they're in a bit of a difficult situation. My concern is that it just ends up drifting a little bit, and they think, well, there's only one team who goes down. They're expanding the league from 12 to 14, so it's going to be even harder to go down, if you like, or even easier to stay up. And so I think my worry is that it just ends up drifting a little bit. And by the way, they used to think it would be impossible for Liverpool to go down, and they did. They were a bit fucked by COVID, but they did get relegated the last time this happened, where they sort of ended up drifting a little bit. So if they think it's impossible for them to go down, then they need to look back a little bit on sort of history. But I just worry that with the women's team, it's going to end up drifting, and I think there's a bit of a decision to make around, do you really try and get into that top tier, which would take a lot of investment, or I think there is another way, which is just like they haven't got any scousers. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if they were to say, look, listen, we've got a different idea for the team where it's going to have a real Liverpool heartbeat, and we're going to invest in the academy, and there's loads of great players from Liverpool, by the way. They just play for other teams.
Yep.
So there's plenty. This
we're going to work in and work with the community, and we're going to do this, and we're going to go into all the communities where maybe there's not a ton of representation in general in the women's game as well, and we're going to go and do that work, and we're going to bring people through, and this is our plan.
Yeah, and I'd get on board with that. For me, when I go to see the women, I don't want them to win, but I want to enjoy the football. I want to enjoy the style as well. And you just want to get on sort of board with it a little bit at the moment. And I felt like last year I found it a little bit harder to engage with it and to enjoy sort of even when it did go, really, because you're not really sure kind of what you're buying into, apart from the fact that, the badge sort of on the shirts, really. I think what I'd like to see or see as an alternative, listen, I'd love to see them go out there and buy the best players in the world, but if for whatever reason that's not possible, then I think the alternative, what they could do, is really invest in the academy, really invest in developing, quality sort of players. The best Scouts player we had, we sold, and listen, that's a footballing decision, but at least that gives you sort of some identity and something to sort of, for other people within the city to sort of latch on to, really. And this idea that if you were to tell me, well, in 3 years' time, we'll have 6 great Scouse players playing in this team, they play really entertaining football, some weeks they win 4-0, another week they might get 2-0, but it's a laugh, I'd be like, Samuel,
let's go.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to going to the match and being part of all of that. No, I think that's it. For me, I think it's for you said before about directionless. I think that part of the point is what from the outside, it feels to me as sort of ebbed after the 4th place finish, which was an opportunity. And I do think that there is a sense where the 4th place finish came earlier than anyone expected, and sometimes that can do you in. You can get to a destination a little bit quicker. But where I feel as though there's just become a little bit of a conflict, really, is linked into your thing there is what is it that we're all meant to be going to see and getting excited about. For me, it should be Arsenal just won the European Cup. I'd be let's just try and win the European Cup. And what do we therefore have to do to go on that? And if you want to say that is the plan, but it's going to take 7 years, that's great, but start to communicate precisely what that is so we can look at the milestones along the way and go, well, that's great, we got to that milestone and that milestone, but a lot of that seems to have stopped. And I don't know if I worry at times, and let's be clear about this, like I didn't get to anywhere near enough women's games last season, and there's a variety of reasons why. So you don't want to sound like a bit of a bell end if you're not careful. Are you doing enough? Are you paying attention enough? But none of the noises and none of the other people I know who were very, very, very committed to the women's game, who were going all the time and seeing everything, they're not seeing the same thing either. No. And I think that is why this gets difficult and why it gets hard. And I don't want to sound as though we're having, an absolutely mad go, but I do think at some point Liverpool, they've just got to fucking crack on with one of these things or another, including we're here to be a really strong advert for the women's game. I'm happy with that one as well. What do you think that is and how do you think that works and what's the direction for that? And as you say, it could be that you decide with the local heartbeat, it could be that you go for excellence. You've just got to pick, but once you pick, you've got to go all in. Yeah, and I just don't want to get to the point where we've got a women's team just to say we've got a women's team. Do you know what I mean? Because then it's just wasting everyone's time. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like you just saying like, well, we've got a women's team. And listen, there's other obviously advantages to having a women's team. I say advantages, I'm aware that for a lot of people it's their opportunity to go and watch a Liverpool team, and people sort of do really enjoy it. So I'm not talking down those experiences, but it's experiences for a very limited number of people. We're seeing the sort of the crowds that we get. How do we get these experiences for more people? How do we encourage more people to go down? How do we, all get more excited, including the people who are going every week, but those of us who would go more, maybe if there was a bit sort of momentum behind it. I think it is that for me, really. And so, I'd like to see a little bit more of that, over the summer, either communicated verbally or just, by the actions of who they're getting in, who is the manager going to be, what's their style, sort of how they're talking. It's all these just sort of question marks at the moment that make you feel like it's just drifting. There we are. Excellent stuff from John. Agree 100%. Drifting is not good. We're not in favour of it in any way, shape or form. Listen, loads and loads of good stuff on the Anfield Wrap. Really enjoyed doing a gutter yesterday. Lots of people have said nice things about it, which is nice when that sort of thing happens, because it didn't quite go the way Rob intended. And I don't mean that as a criticism. Rob went with the flow of what was in the room. We had an extended conversation about Mark Gay, so that is worth checking out, and that is available at the minute behind the paywall. So if you want to subscribe, do go either through the app or to the AnfieldWrap.com/subscribe. Not all the gutters, but the gutters that is on a Tuesday are also put out as videos, so you can subscribe through YouTube and see that as well, if that's what you want to do, and other ways and means to go about that sort of business. So do check that out if you get the opportunity to do so, and loads of other things to subscribe for as well. We are excited. We are looking forward to the new season. It's nice to be back in harness. It's nice to be back with John. Let's go and do the absolute business. Thanks very much to Patrick for pulling all this together. We'll see you soon. That's been the news. That is the news.